Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is X and we're back with another video today. Today we're going to be covering 4 different mechanics that are definitely, critiqued upon with the competitive community when it comes to shooting mechanics. I decided to put them all together rather than 4 separate videos because I know that even though it'd be easier on me to have 4 separate videos and stretch it out one a week, I'd be getting way ahead of myself. Unfortunately, I would feel like that would also just be a lazy man's way of doing this, and also I can't critique all of them, how they interact with each other and how they all affect it. But each of these 4 mechanics plays a huge part in Halo's shooting mechanics. So what we're going to do here is go into each one of these. We're going to be covering bloom, spread, recoil, and flinch. All 4 of these mechanics have all affected Halo in different ways. They've been added and removed and slightly altered throughout the Halo games, and they all play a different part in how Halo stays competitive. And that's just something we're going to discuss here as we get along in the video. I will be mostly covering bloom, where it was the most controversial part of it. I think it was the second most controversial, right next to armor lock, which we'll be covering in another video. We'll also be covering flinch, which was a huge issue in Halo 4. So get ready for this. It might be a lengthy video, but you're probably going to enjoy it if you're a competitive player and really understand this stuff. The first thing we're going to kind of address here is how there's different things that go around, different understandings of how bloom works, because even to this day people still don't know what bloom is. I asked this question, and funny enough, a lot of people did not actually know what bloom was, and they did not understand it, or when they did say they understand it, they completely understood a different concept of what bloom was. And it's actually come to my attention that this is why there was still a controversy then, and there's still controversy now about bloom, because a lot of people didn't understand what the whole problem was with it. So that's why I think it's a good video, also kind of give people a little bit of an education on what bloom was, so that they know what this was and make it a little more clear, because there actually is some confusion with bloom. Okay, so like one of the things was people would say bloom has always been in Halo and has just been seen as a visual thing, and that it's always been there. Then you have people who say that bloom has never been in there, that it's never been in any Halo game ever. And then you have people that mix up bloom and spread as this one and the same, and the fact is that they're different things, but people see them as one and the same because of other reasons that I'll go into. But yeah, the problem is with all these misconceptions, it's caused a misunderstanding of what bloom was, and so because of that, people couldn't understand why there was such a controversy over it. So we're going to try and clear that up a little bit in the video, but also try and go in depth of what each mechanic does and how it plays in the shooting mechanics. Let's start with the most controversial one here, which is bloom itself. This was a very controversial subject back in Halo Reach because so many people had different opinions on it. A lot of people said that it made it so that it was less spammy in the games when it first came out with the vanilla version of bloom, and then it made it so that people weren't just spamming the trigger, that they actually had to take precision shots, which meant shooting people at further ranges made it a little more difficult, which would help them, which in a part it would sometimes do that, and we're going to explain how in some cases it actually did not help at all. But so people were, complaining that that if you were sucking at getting kills with the bloom, it was just because you were dumb at the game and didn't know how to pace your shots. Then there were the others that complained that how in previous Halo games that there was no giant bloom to these long-range precision-based weapons that had such a ridiculous spread on them. And both are right to a degree. Funny thing was, when looking at how spread works in previous Halo games, I came across an old debate article that showed some of the stuff when it came to Halo 2 and Halo 3 when comparing the BRs. And the funny part about Halo 2's BR, which, oh my god, it's kind of the reason why it was considered OP, was because there was literally no spread. There was no bloom, no spread, nothing. Didn't matter if you were 10 feet away from the person or 20 yards back, or even like half the map all the way back. If you fired, you were hitting everyone pinpoint accurate. There was no spread at all. Nothing at all to throw your weapon off. You could fire this weapon basically across the map and hit people with headshots. It was that ridiculous. And yeah, because of that high accuracy, it made even the sniper rifle look like a joke in comparison. When sniper rifles, if they aren't zoomed in, basically those shots are gonna at least divert off and have a little bit of spread to them. But the BR did not have that. I think that was something that was like an oversight by Bungie. They just did not look into that, and then they just kept it as is. But that's actually why Halo 2's BR is it's really loved for how powerful it is. But that's why there's problems with it, and that's why in Halo 3 they gave it an ROF cap, so that you couldn't fire it as fast, and also they added spread to it, so that way it made it less overpowered, and all the other weapons actually had some use. Otherwise, it completely killed the sandbox. Bungie, though, intended. The thing is, with looking back at this, Bloom did actually exist, but not in the way that we fully understood it. Certain weapons had literally no bloom. It was just entirely spread. And then other games, they did have bloom. So, or some of the weapons did have bloom. So, like, for example, the Halo 1 Magnum, if you were to spam the trigger, firing it, like holding it down, because it has an automatic feature, if you just hold down the trigger, it'll keep firing, your shots will definitely divert way off course really quickly, actually. But if you fire it, just tapping it at a steady pace, you'll actually get accuracy on that. But then some of the other weapons, like in Halo 2 and Halo 3, with the BR, there is no bloom effect. Even no matter how fast you fire it, the area of which the shots go is not going to go outside of that. It's not going to go any further than that. Where the reticle is, it's going to stay right there. But then what I also noticed with, because I felt like that was off, that wasn't entirely accurate, because I didn't feel like bloom was applied to every weapon. And sure enough, when I looked that up, yeah, it's true. Some of the weapons did not have bloom at all. It was entirely spread 100%. Like, for example, the AR. The AR shot, for example, just completely diverts off right off the bat. Like, some of the times when I first time pulled the trigger, it did not land straight up on course. It ended up diverting off to somewhere else when firing. Versus the Magnum, for example, when firing the first shot, always was on target. So it's interesting. It seemed to only apply to precision-based weapons in Halo 1. I'm not sure how it, applied differently throughout the Halo 2 and Halo 3 games, but there was some form of bloom that did exist, but it only seemed to apply to certain weapons at certain times, and then other weapons it didn't exist at all. So what's interesting with Halo Reach is if they just said, nope, we're going to apply it to everything now. So that's pretty much how it kind of basically got added. So people didn't notice this because a lot of the times they weren't ever actually in a situation where they ever saw this, because the more competitive players were never going to be using something like an AR. They were going to be more likely using the Magnum, so they knew about bloom being there already. Whereas the standardized player who was playing, Halo 1 back in the day, when they were using an AR, they never even saw bloom. So this is why this caused a confusion where people did not know that it existed, because they weren't applied to every single weapon. I tested on multiple different weapons and vehicles, and yeah, it's kind of weird. Some weapons it has it, and some weapons it just does not have bloom. So I didn't go into each individual one because that would just take forever, and this video is already going to be long enough. I'm already getting to 10 minutes, and we haven't even barely gotten into this about how much there is when it comes to this. So Bungie intended bloom to be a way to make it so players would shoot with precision weapons at a slower rate, so that they couldn't get easier kills from across the map. So the DMR was supposed to be something that was meant for longer ranges than what the battle rifle was capable of. So in Halo 4 and Halo 5, when 343 added both of them in, they ran into a huge noticeable issue where one weapon would overtake the other in the fields that it was trying to fire at. So they had to, change it so that how its designated role would work, for example, for each weapon. So they adjusted so where the BR was meant for a more medium to mid-short range accurate weapon to be most effective at, whereas the DMR was more meant for mid-long to long range accuracy. And in a way, without Bungie really making it clear, they were trying to make other weapons be used for more close range encounter situations, but that took the fun away from it and frustrated esport players that were supposed to, that were not supposed to, were used to weapons like the DMR that was capable of being used in close range scenarios. And then having these situations where the bullets completely diverted off caused a lot of issues. Having the reticule, some people call it reticle, some people call it reticule, I don't know. But they had a basically your aimer grow so massively that when shots were fired too quickly, they would easily, especially at close range encounter situations, divert off. And so people were trying to pace their shots. But supposedly there was a recorded esport event at one of the tournaments that was kind of almost one of the downfalls of esports with Halo, where basically one player was completely spamming their trigger on their DMR, while another player did what Bungie intended the DMR to do and paced his shots, and he lost at about a medium range engagement, while the spammer just got lucky with RNG. There was even, a test I saw on this where players showed that, if you fire at a medium range engagement, you'll be able to kill a player faster by spamming the trigger and spending more ammo, but at least you'll get them quicker by killing them in 2.66 TTK versus if you pace your shots, it takes over 3 seconds. And in a competitive environment, that is a huge difference. That's almost about, half a second quicker, which basically is could be the make or break of winning a game. And yeah, I think when that person got killed in the esports, when something like that happened, it was a perfect example. Just guy just spamming the trigger on one side and the other guy just pacing it, and the guy pacing it goes, "This is why Reach sucks." It basically was kind of like, everyone was kind of getting tired of the fact that Bloom was just completely ruining and the whole you have to pace your shots, and even when you did pace your shots, you lose the people that were spamming. So it did not make sense, especially with precision-based weapons having such a huge effect by that. So when it comes to Halo Reach for Halo MCC, which a lot of people have been bringing this up about whether or not they're going to go with the vanilla version of Bloom, or if they're going to have the title update version. And for a lot of this stuff, that they're going to probably do, I'm strongly believing that they're going with the title update. I don't think they're going to go with the vanilla version that was at launch because of all the controversies that happened. But there was a lot of people bringing up about Bloom being in Halo Reach for the MCC. They were just like, oh my god, Bloom. It's funny because technically some of the Blooms still exist in the title update, just not entirely. When it comes to like precision-based weapons, it's 0, but there's still Bloom in like some of the weapons. I think like the AR, I believe, still has Bloom. But yeah, people were definitely like all going, oh, which one is it going to have? Is it vanilla or is it going to be title update? If it's going to be vanilla, I'm not going to get it and whatnot. But yeah, I think because with 343 in charge, and also the original version just didn't work as intended, and that massive Bloom prom just took away from the competitive style of the gameplay, and the esport players just were just mindlessly spamming the trigger, hoping to get lucky with RNG spread. Also, they usually have Halo games as they were when they were last updated, like Halo 3 and Halo 2. Some of the spots I knew back in the day that you could get to before they were patched later on in later patches during that time. When it came to Halo MCC, those same areas were patched. So I'm believing that they're going to just leave it how it was last patched before it was left as is. So I'm believing it's going to be strongly the title update version that it's going to be at. I'd be pretty surprised if they actually did the vanilla version, but I'll let people vote on that. I did a little community vote on that, and funny enough, I think more people voted for the vanilla version, but I don't know. I mean, personally, I really think that, it was better without the Bloom on precision weapons. It's just, yeah, I'll get more into that. The thing is, Bloom has, it technically has always existed, but Reach had 2 ways that it implemented in an interesting way. There was both the visual way they introduced it that has never been seen, and also they applied it to every weapon. So people can now see the Bloom as it was growing massively, causing people to have this hate for massive spread of RNG beyond the regular reticule little cone crosshairs. Because of this, people misunderstood what bloom was, since it was, a two-parter, basically. This controversy comes from two different understandings of what bloom was, and so that's why people just have, this blurred line of understanding what bloom was versus spread. People go, what are you talking about? Bloom's always been in the game, and then other people, no, it hasn't, and then people are showing, like, examples of, like, see, this is bloom, and they're showing, like, the AR firing from different ranges, and like, no, that's spread, dude. That's not bloom. Bloom was what was on the magnum, and so because of that, there's this whole confusion, and also there's no terminology really given here. So I'm gonna, try to do my own terminology about the two parts of bloom, so that people can understand it a little bit better. But people in the esport community might have a different understanding of how they understand bloom, and that's totally fine. I mean, however, whatever floats your. But yeah, hopefully though with this, it just clears everything up so that people understand it, as well as I'm also going to quickly brush over the Recoil and Flinch controversies with that as well, that some people had. Some were like more controversial than others, but yeah, I'll also be covering those as well. Actually, since we're, on the subject of these two, since they're really quickly explainable, everyone pretty much can actually understand them a little bit well, especially with the Recoil. I'll just brush over those ones real quickly right now, which is kind of funny because I had no idea that Flinch had actually been in the game as long as it had been. I thought it was actually introduced into Halo 4 as a way to counter removing descoping, but apparently Flinch was even in previous Halo games of Halo Reach and Halo 3, and supposedly Halo 2 as well. I couldn't test that, but I definitely know in Halo 3, watching this test, that it was in there as well. So it's actually interesting that Flinch has been in there, but basically it was just really bad in Halo 4. I absolutely hated flinching in Halo 4. It was pretty bad. No, not pretty bad. It was absolutely atrocious. That's the best way to describe it. I absolutely hated the alternative. I wanted descoping gone, but I did not want descoping gone with Flinch as it was. That was just terrible. I didn't want Flinch at all. But yeah, Halo 4 and Halo Reach and Halo 3 and supposedly Halo 2 all had this flinching mechanic, and Halo 4, I think, was personally the one that was most noticeable, which everyone hated, but actually looking at it, Halo Reach's flinch absolutely sucked, because unlike Halo 4's, where it just knocks you straight up and you have to pull back down, Reach's, even though it didn't push you that far up, it also push you to the side. So you actually had to both now X and Y coordinate readjust back to center on a target, rather than just having to go down the Y axis. So basically it made it an additional thing you had to fix as well, and it kind of got really annoying. This is just when you got incoming fire. For those that don't understand Flinch, sorry, let me explain that. When you're taking fire from someone while you're zoomed in, it'll cause your aim to go up. So when you're taking damage and you're shooting at someone's head, it'll cause them to go up. That's why some competitive players aim for the body sometimes and knock out the shields, and by the time that they're taking all that damage and they flinched up because they're taking damage, they will be able to quickly line up a headshot. That's just some people's ways of how they play competitively in esports events. But yeah, that's just an interesting thing I wanted to cover here, because how it was an annoying thing that some people did not like entirely, because of the fact that it was yanking your gun around, and it's just some people did not like that. Oh, it's supposed to be realistic, and then some of the competitive players like, I don't like Call of Duty physics being added to my Halo. But now with Recoil was actually definitely introduced in Halo 2. Best examples of weapons that were affected by Recoil were the SMGs. They added this in, even though they tried to say it was like how powerful the SMGs were, which they were not powerful compared to like a BR. When you fired that, it was kind of like more like they just, someone going up to you and tickling you, go tickle, 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 because those things did not do as much damage as they actually should be doing. But they, on top of that, they added like a whole bunch of negative effects with dual wielding SMGs and other weapons, because like every time you picked up a weapon, I think they lowered your damage down to like 75% or something like that. I forgot how that worked. I think general kid did a video on that on the SMGs with Halo 2 and Halo 3. They altered them in a way once you dual wielded them, which is really annoying. So yeah, and so even after you dual wield them and they lowered your damage, they on top of that both dual wielded and undual wielded. If you held down the trigger, it had a recoil effect, which pulled your gun up. In other Halo games afterwards, some guns were also affected by this as well, where if you kept firing it, it would actually just pull up, kind of like a flinch in itself, but you're not taking damage. It would just pull the gun up as you kept firing, and you had to keep adjusting, which kind of is annoying, especially if it's a precision-based weapon. This should never even exist at all for recoil on those weapons, because that's basically it throws off the whole point of having a precision accuracy to it. Personally, I don't even like recoil in general, but that's just, my own bias. So when it comes back to, getting back to bloom here, bloom has, here's my terminology for it. There's reticule bloom and there's visual spread bloom, whatever you want to call it. Visual bloom, visual spread. Basically, the reason why I break it up here is so that it is less confusing for players to understand what bloom is, because otherwise if you just say bloom in general, people have a misunderstanding and try to talk about two different things. Maybe if I, split it up here, it might make it a little more easy to understand. So, Halo Reach introduced the visual way of seeing this bloom spread thing. It showed you how it was growing and that where the spread area was. So when you fired, your AR, and you saw those little things move, little vertical crosshairs moving, as it grew a little bit larger, that was showing the bloom effect, where it was opening up the area where the spread of your shots would land. So that was something new that was, added, the visual part of it, even though it was already there. Reticule bloom has always been something that's in the game. It's always been, if you fire too much, the area just grows. And so that's why, people act like it's so weird that they go, oh, thank God, yeah, in Halo 5 we don't have bloom. And I'm just like sitting here going, what are you talking about? Because there's definitely bloom. There's bloom in multiple weapons. I think even Halo Reach's or Halo 5's BR has bloom. Halo 4's BR had bloom. And yeah, if the AR in Halo 5 definitely has bloom. So a lot of people don't know that bloom does exist. It's not as ridiculous as it used to be. Like Halo Reach's or vanilla version of bloom was so massive it went outside the reticule range, and so it caused so many people to just throw a fit about that it should stay within the range. It made it completely like, what was the point of even having that cone shape if the bullets could already go outside that? It kind of just made all these pointless controversies with reticule bloom when you're trying to look at your reticule and it's just going outside of it, and you're like, wait, why are these shots just flying all over the place? Why is it going way outside of it? In fact, there's actually a glitch. If you in custom games turn on infinite ammo, like bottomless clip, so that you never have to reload and you can keep firing, if you do it to the plasma repeater in custom games, if you keep firing it, it'll eventually go so far out, it'll glitch out and readjust back to center pivot, and just keep doing that over and over again. If you just keep holding down the trigger, it'll just keep doing that every time. It's pretty funny, but yeah, that's how ridiculous the bloom is, and that's why people wanted that title update version that would cause so many controversies with that just massive bloom that just made your shot just grow and grow and grow to the point where it's like way up. People didn't like that. People want to be able to like just hold down the trigger and fire. And so because of that, also if they were to actually show the actual accuracy of the reticule bloom, like how far it went, it would just look ridiculous. It would look like kind of like an AR reticule for the DMR in Halo Reach, if it in the vanilla version, if it was as big as it was, and they were showing like how far it would grow. And that would look really awkward when you look at like something like the BR in Halo 2 and Halo 3, and you're just comparing the like reticule size. It just looks really ridiculous for a DMR. So that's just, yeah, it's not something that a lot of competitive players really liked. And I personally, after looking at this, first I was kind of like not that, like bothered by it, but now I'm like looking at it, I'm like, yeah, if you actually were to draw the size of that thing, that would just be just ridiculously massive, and it just would be so annoying to have to deal with if you're trying to play competitively, and even in general, just playing, it just got annoying. So in the title update for Halo Reach, which is probably going to be how Halo MCC works and how it worked in, I think they even added in Halo 2 Anniversary, I'm not sure, but in for the multiplayer, and then Halo 4 and Halo 5, the bloom stays within the reticule. So you see that visual spread, and it always stays within that area. So you feel more comfortable when you shoot your shots, even with weapons that have automatic fire. You can at least control burst it and get accuracy on it. But if you want to be able to fire at a fast rate, you can. But with some other weapons, like for example the BR, there is zero bloom, but there is spread. So it'll stay within that area, but that's how far it goes. It doesn't actually go any further. So if you see your reticule have a little animation that grows, that's bloom basically. It's telling you that the area of spread is now going to increase as you fire. So basically keep that in mind every time you're firing. Personally, I also think, I'm just going to note here, I really hope that they add in a little bit of Battlefield 5 mechanics here. I know that don't go, oh my god, no. It's like, when I say this, it's just for more of the precision-based weapons, but I think it should apply across the board. Basically, where the first shot always lands on target. I think that's something that should always happen. I think that's something cool. I didn't really get into Battlefield 5 for multiple reasons, but one of the things that they did add, which is a really important thing that I think they should add in all weapons, is that the first shot always lands on target. There's no, even in the spread, there should be the first shot is pinpoint accurate 100%, and as you fire it, kind of has a little bit of that spread go, and then if it has bloom, it just grows that spread. Basically, that's just a little more accurate weapon shooting mechanics, in my opinion, of making sure the first shot always goes there. There's no chance of it ever deviating. I think even like in Halo 5, they had to fix the BR because there were situations where the spread caused some weird issues where it went off course and caused a lot of complaints on that. I think that was one of the 50 million updates they did with the BR. Like, I remember, like, for 2 months it was just update every single week, or 2 updates every week with weapon tunings, and it kind of got a little ridiculous. So, like, are you guys ever going to fix anything else but the BR? But yeah, so when it comes to this bloom and spread is just randomized whatever's in that circle area, and bloom is whatever is, when it's continuously fired, the spread area grows. And because of that, a lot of people think that bloom only existed in Halo Reach because it grew outside the reticule and it made your shots go crazy. But in reality, it is in the other Halo games before and after. It's just that it's beforehand was never visually shown. It only applied to certain weapons. And then when it came to like Halo 4 and Halo 5, like for example, I think the Halo 4 BR, no spread. The Halo DMR did have bloom. Or sorry, my bad. Halo 4 BR had spread, no bloom, and then when it came to the DMR, it did have bloom. And I think the same kind of thing situation with the BRs too, and the DMRs, is that they had that same thing where I think DMRs no spread, or had spread, no bloom, and then with DMR it did have bloom. So yeah, it's yeah, unfortunately, there's just this mass hysteria because of that gigantic reticle size that got a lot of esport players really annoyed by that. So that's why eventually they just removed that in a title update and added in matchmaking, a title version instead of a anniversary. Or I think they call it anniversary, and then they had just a regular matchmaking vanilla version. I think there was other reasons why, Bungie added in that bloom effect in Halo Reach. There was a lot of things too. People don't understand, that the BR was this medium range weapon, where this DMR was more for a longer range engagement. So it's trying to give ARs and plasma repeaters, or ARs, you guys, are assault rifles for anyone that's just wondering, trying to give them more of a reason to be used in certain engagements that were a little further out, because, the RF now was the rate of fire was kind of being capped in a way, making the players pace their shots because of the fact that if you fired a lot, it wasn't necessarily that they capped it physically or forcefully, because you could still fire at a fast pace, but that it wasn't as accurate. So it kind of made it so that the AR and plasma repeater had some better odds in closer quarter engagements, whereas in Halo 2 and Halo 3, especially in Halo 2, people still resorted to a BR in close quarters engagements. BR was kind of like a jack of all trades in Halo 2, which made a lot of the other weapons almost useless to use in competitive matches sometimes. Unless it was like a super powerful weapon like a sniper rifle or a rocket launcher or something like that, then it was definitely they would resort to that or the energy sword. But almost every time, if it's like someone with an SMG, it was kind of like laughable because you just pull out the battle rifle and shoot them. Even if you didn't use button combo glitches, you would still be able to wreck them. But people hated that because they hated that whole bloom effect because they found that didn't actually cause people to pace their shots. It just told people to spend some. Everyone had a DMR, so you might as well just spam it because you're just gonna pick up more ammo anyways off the dead player. So it didn't actually cause people to actually pace their shots, thus showing that they were just lucking out on RNG spread and thus punishing players that actually tried to shoot more accurately, and it actually took away from the skill factor and told people to just spam your trigger. Usually this happens in medium to long range engagements as well. But yeah, I think that was the problem, was that esport players did not like that whole thing of like making massive spread area with that bloom effect happen that ruined the whole competitive side of it. And I think though, in a way though, with at least the visual side, which was something I really liked, and it not only made just the average player more accurate, but even newer players, it helped them understand the shooting mechanics a lot quicker. So I actually think that actually helped a little bit more than anything. But there's some super competitive players that say that automatic weapons shouldn't even have a visual option of seeing where your shot's going. That way it doesn't help the people who use automatic weapons. But if you don't want automatic weapons in esport events, I mean, they take it out anyways. So I mean, I don't think you should apply that punishment to everyone just because that's your way of playing it. I mean, if you want to play the esport way, there's definitely tons of ways that's available for you to play. But yeah, there's that a little bit controversy that you shouldn't even have visual options. And then there's even some extreme people I haven't really come across, but I've heard of, that say that there should not be any bloom at all. Every weapon should just have a generic spread. And back to the Halo 1 days. I mean, seriously, there are people that do that stuff where they're so like in their mind like, oh, we just want it in this one area and nothing else, and we want to go back to the Halo 1 days pretty much. It's like, I don't think we're ever going to go back to the perfect Halo 1 days that you want. There's definitely not everyone in favor of that. But yeah, those are the different issues. The spread, which is just the RNG random number generated area where your bullet might land in that certain reticule area. Then there's bloom, which makes it grow from like a smaller area spread to a more larger area. Then there's flinch, where you take damage and it causes your gun to yank up. And then there's recoil, where when you fire your gun, it pulls up on its own. Just some other things I wanted to add here about that. The recoil that I also definitely dislike a little bit is like, it makes no sense. You can have an SMG that pulls up when you're firing, but yet you have a saw that fires way more shots, way more powerful, and it stays on target. And the funny part is, in Halo 5, is that you can dual wield the SMG now, and yet you still have this effect of recoil when you fire your weapon, which it's not as strong, but it's still annoying when it happens. And with the flinch part of it, when it came to Halo 3, it is so minute, it's so hardly noticeable, because the amount of time you like take one shot and whatnot, your gun, even though it pulls up a little bit, it goes back down on target almost in a tenth of a second, and you just don't even really notice it. So it's almost not even there, but it technically actually does exist, and that your shots can miss if you're firing within that time that the gun gets yanked up. So now that we've covered the whole things with flinch, recoil, bloom, and spread, and how there's a visual assistance for the spread bloom area that you can see a lot better, that helped newer players as well as players in general be more accurate, and the ridicule bloom, which was something that's just always existed, just applied to certain weapons as in previous Halo games, not all of them, and also that when it got applied to Halo Reach, it was kind of drastic. And then in Halo 4 and onward, it minimized actually even in Halo Reach, with the title update, it minimized the bloom effects, or even completely removed it on certain weapons, so that they were more accurate for precision-based weapons. So now that we have all that understood, we now get a better understanding of how they work, and also I got to share my thoughts on which areas were not really liked by me and others that also didn't like it, and where they can improve on in Halo Infinite. When it comes down to it, I believe that most weapons should have little to no recoil should be used at all, because I think it's really unnecessary for a lot of these. It takes away the competitive aspect. It should be based on how quickly they can fire a weapon that might have some recoil, but other than that, I don't think there should be much recoil to a weapon. Even the SMG at least limits it, but even the fastest firing weapon should still definitely have a very manageable firing that a player can stay on target, as well as playing as a Spartan or even possibly as an elite. I think that the SMGs got way too much recoil back in the day, and they already had a lot of negative effects already added to them, like massive spread, as well as also in dual wielding they nerfed the damage. So I feel like this is an unnecessary thing that they added in Halo 2 and Halo 3 to punish those weapons even more, to an extent that was just unnecessary. And for those complaining about esports, if they don't find it balanced, they can just easily just remove the weapon as a weapon used in the matchmaking settings. It doesn't always have to have it. But I think that if a player can use a noob combo in MLG tournaments, then I don't think they should really be complaining about dual wielding SMGs. Also, the recoil should just go like how actual recoil works, not this weird thing of some weapon recoils like also angle to the side. I've actually found in some games for Halo, the weapon doesn't just pull up, it pulls to the side. Doesn't make any sense to me. When it comes to Flinch, I feel it really doesn't even have a place in Halo. A lot of esport players I saw like on forums mention that they just don't even find it competitive at all, that having Flinch in the game. It completely removes that. It's just for something for more of a less skilled player to take on a more skilled player by descoping them and causing their gun to yank up. But I feel that just takes away from the competitive aspect of it. I think it shouldn't actually exist at all. I might be okay if it's like really minute, like it was in the Halo 3 days, where it's very minuscule, but Halo Reach and Halo 4 were just ridiculous in how much flinch they had. As for spread, it should always apply to every weapon. It should have a little bit of spread, maybe a massive amount of spread, but it's always something within the ridicule range. I know people love the Halo 2 BR that had 0 spread. Even I thought it was fun back in the day, but to be truthful and to admit that there is a problem with the Halo 2 BR, that not having any spread made it so that the other weapons, especially when firing from the hip, basically allowed for cross map kills with a BR, making it a long range weapon that lost or made it lose value a bit for certain other weapons that were meant for long range, and completely broke the sandbox of weapons. So obviously it needs to have spread in there to be balanced, even though it's fun to play with an overpowered weapon, which is why in Halo Infinite, the top 50 list, one of the things I mentioned there that people want is a whole mode where you just play with overpowered versions of every weapon in Halo, where you have like a BR with no it's a 3-shot or 4-shot I think it is, with no spread, and you can fire really fast. So just there's that topic stuff. That'd be fun for like a game mode, but I don't think we should actually have that for esport events where we have the BR completely replace every weapon and completely break the meta and the sandbox and all that stuff. It may have made sense in Halo 2 days when there wasn't an abundance of weapons, but now that there are weapons like the DMRs that are in the game, the BRs need to be fit for a more medium to medium range situation. Medium to close medium range weapon. Also, the spread should definitely be also completely non-existent when aiming. Like, it should be very minuscule when you're aiming the weapon. Visual spread, I think, should stay. I actually like it. I can understand if custom games, if people want to turn it off, that's an option, maybe, but I think it helps just fine in matchmaking multiplayer games for PvP, both to be competitive, but also for a reasonable extent, it also is fair for newer players trying to get into the game and understand how the weapon works. And it just does that without even have to doing a tutorial, basically. As for bloom, that should also, go without saying that it should stay. It should be there from, the first shot, though. It should be always pinpoint accurate. And then as you keep firing, there's the spamming the trigger. That's when the spread area, begins to grow, depending on the reticle size. That's how far it'll go. It always has been in, Halo games. It should stay there. But for precision-based weapons, the bloom is very small. Maybe in some weapons, the bloom is completely 0%. Technically, what I said about precision-based accuracy, technically there would be a bloom there because you have to have the first shot perfectly accurate, and then you can have, a little bit of spread. I think that's, fair, however you want to call that, if it is bloom or if it's just that your shots are, first shot always just has to be accurate and then the spread just kicks in. But either way on that, pistol might have, more bloom than a DMR by that kind of factor. For instance, since the pistol is not built for long range, if you fire really fast, it's going to obviously start losing accuracy a lot quicker. For trying to shoot at a longer range, the bloom should be more noticeable if you don't aim, to encourage aiming in games instead of firing from the hip. As for, the Reaches version for MCC, they have a vanilla version. I don't think that should happen. I think I understand that Bungie had good intentions for what it was supposed to be, but it just was something that they realized it was a bad design in the end when they finally put it into an actual game, and it just failed for esports. And 343 fixed it in a title update, and even Bungie themselves doesn't even put it in their own Destiny series where they don't. They have that massive reticle bloom. It's always stayed within the reticle range because that keeps the weapon precision accurate. I could, be wrong on that. Maybe, I don't, recall everything, the way other people see it. Maybe they like it like that, but, you put that in the comment section if you want to. Halo games going on forward, didn't, keep with that massive bloom introduction. Instead, just kept regular bloom in the game, applied it to every weapon. So I think that's, definitely something you should keep it visually on every weapon if it, is there, and that it also should apply to every weapon. Yeah, I did ask the community on this, and I'll probably leave a link in the discussion area if I remember to do that. But that is where I stand on this controversy, where I see what they should do with Flinch, where completely remove it, Recoil, where they should be limited, Bloom, where it should definitely have the visual effect to it, and that it should always stay within reticule range and apply to every weapon, and that spread should always have the first shot on target, and then the effects start spreading out, so that way it's more accurate gun mechanics in my opinion. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts about Flinch, Recoil, spread, and bloom, and the visual and reticule bloom aspects. What do you think your opinions are on it? Where they should go for maybe Halo MCC for the title update, where they should go for Halo Infinite? Just let me know in the comment section below where your opinions are, and just let me know, and I'll be interested in reading those when I get a chance. Anyways, that's the end of this 40-minute video. Another very controversial subject. I'm glad I just did in 4 videos or the 4 different sections. I didn't do it in 4 videos. I just did it all in one because otherwise this would just be a bunch of lengthy videos. But anyways, again, yeah, comment down below what your opinions are. If you like the video, like it. If you dislike it, whichever way you feel about it. Again, comment down, let me know your opinions about it. Definitely give me, opinions on what your views are, and hit that subscribe button if you want to get more Halo controversy videos. If you want to get updates when the second of these new videos drop, make sure you hit that notification. If you want to check out any options to support me financially, I definitely have a Patreon account. If you guys want to, support me that way, it would be much appreciated. Not necessary, but I definitely welcome it. Anyways, I'll end this video here. You all take care. Peace.
The bass.